Everybody Hates Rand is a Wheel of Time podcast that will contain spoilers for all 14 books. So if you're anti-spoiler, stop this, read all 14 books, and come back. We'll be here, waiting.
Our title is a joke and is meant to be taken as such. Everybody in this context refers to us and our cats. You are free to feel however you want about Rand. He's a fictional character. Please don't DM us.
The world is a mess, Dark One stretching out his hand. The dragon's reborn, the fire's been fanned, but everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand. Everybody hates Rand.
Okay, so Knife of Dreams,
This is Everybody Hates Rand.
your friendly neighborhood Wheelie Time podcast. I'm Emily Jushaw.
I'm Sally Goodger, and the rumbling you hear is Ed, who is sitting directly under the microphone.
Beneath the microphone, so that'll just be like a nice little undercurrent to this otherwise non-soothing conversation about Elaine making some of the stupidest decisions imaginable.
Yeah, I am just gonna get this out of the way so that I don't keep saying it. I need like a shock collar on me so that every time I say it, it's like...
Okay.
I cannot fathom what the point of these two chapters are. Like, none of it makes sense to me from like a plot perspective, except, as we've said multiple times, Robert Jordan has a lot of loose ends to tie up. In this instance, the Black Aja members that murdered Adelius.
/ escaped the White Tower.
Yeah.
Like, what was it? 7-8 books ago?
150 years ago.
Yeah.
So...
This isn't even all of them.
There was 9,000 members of the Black Aja that escaped the White Tower, and we'll be hunting them down for the rest of time.
Yeah.
So I read them and I cannot crack them open. Nothing makes sense to me. It is like pure, put me in Alice in Wonderland, because I feel like I'm living in a world of pure illogic. Okay, I've got it out.
Yeah, I too can't quite fathom what was going on in Robert Jordan's understanding of the narrative for him to make this be sort of the climactic sequence, because while we're sticking mostly in this little section with the immediate conflict, I guess you would say, of Elaine and Co. going to confront these Black Aja ladies, and then Elaine getting kidnapped, blah, 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 blah. There's also, in the background, and then in the subsequent chapters, we are, like, coming upon the climax of the siege on Andor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's clear that Robert Jordan wanted to intersect those, or I think it's clear that the intent was to intersect those two things in such a way that, like, we'd get peak climax.
Mm-hmm.
You know, extra climax, Climax Squared.
Ooh.
As some condoms advertise. Can you imagine a sex toy that's like
Climax Squared.
It's not just the climax. It's the Everest of climaxes.
Ooh, excellent.
Leave a trail of dead bodies in your wake.
What's happening in your brain right now? I would like to shelf what's happening in Knife of Dreams.
No, I can do this. I can do it. So Robert Jordan, like, wanted to, you know, for maximum efficiency and for some potential excitement, this is a way to get Elaine personally involved with what is otherwise a sort of geopolitical conflict where her life would not necessarily be in danger, just be soldiers. Although, earlier in this book, I think it was, he had her, like, run onto the walls before the battle was even over, so theoretically you could have Elaine be in plenty of danger. The problem is you just have to have her act like a complete idiot to do it, which she manages to do here anyway. So, but I don't know why the two things have to be connected, except for, you know, the sort of fact that this is Knife of Dreams and a lot of plots are wrapping up. I don't really know why that decision was made.
Yeah, there's a lot happening there. End of sentence. There's a lot happening in these two chapters. we're with Elaine. She's like wandering. It's also like 3 o'clock in the fucking morning. Like she is wandering the halls of her palace, sleepless, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, she's now very alone without Avienda. Avienda isn't mentioned in these chapters, but I very much felt her absence. Yeah. With the idea that, like, Elaine is just getting up and wandering about in the middle of the night, sort of having these random business meetings. We catch up with her when she has just run into the 2 main members of the kin. Now that Rianne's dead, it's Elise and Sumiko are sort of the main ones. And apparently another unnamed kinswoman has just been murdered. So Elaine is like, you have got to tell these idiots to not go anywhere alone. Otherwise they'll get murdered because we're blaming the victims here.
It is a solid fact of the universe that if you're never alone, you never get murdered.
Yeah, and like the buddy system will definitely solve all these problems, you know.
What if your buddy is the fucking murderer? Has anyone ever considered that?
I mean, that would suck, but then I guess at least you'd be pretty obvious.
That's true. That's fair. Sucks for the person who got murdered, but good job for the detective.
Pretty great, yeah, for the investigation.
The police need those types of cases handed to them.
Yeah, this really feels like, what's that fucking meme that went around for a little while with the little crude snowman drawing? Mr. Policeman, we gave you all the clues.
Mr. Policeman.
Why couldn't you find her, Mr. Policeman? Or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
Why couldn't you find the Black Aja, Elaine? We gave you all the clues. Or something. I don't know. Anyway, Elaine is interrupted in this by, this random red Aja woman just sort of barging in. She's exactly as obnoxious as everyone who serves Aleda, and pretty much as every Aes Sedai is when an Aes Sedai is in a situation wherein she wants to be taken seriously. Her name's Duhara, I believe.
Yeah.
And she's like, I've been sent to be your advisor. And Elaine's like, I do not need an advisor. I have Aes Sedai here. And Duhara's like, well, it's so awkward because you're going to have to go back to the White Tower to finish your training and get raised to Aes Sedai, you know, as soon as it's safe to do so. And Elaine's like, I am Aes Sedai, and it's stupid. It's the weirdest thing about it is that it hasn't happened before.
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense because Aleda hasn't had traveling, but at this point, the fast travel enabled by traveling has so skewed our perception of how fast normal people travel that it's like a little bit wild. You know, I'm like, what? This woman's only now showing up? Probably that makes sense, but it's like we're meshing the last season of Game of Thrones with the first season of Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Some characters are just moving at this incredibly fast rate, just bouncing around from point to point on the map, and some are taking 16 episodes to get to King's Landing or whatever the hell.
Yeah.
So that's just yet more of my beef with traveling. But this woman leaves. I don't know what the point of her is, except to remind us that Aleda has a vested interest in what happens, and that Elaine has a vested interest in Aleda not getting a handle on anything in Andor. And so the kinswomen leave, and then Elaine's guards are like, Halwyn Nori wants to see you. Apparently this random pickpocket dude that you sent out after
Hatchet Face
has found something. So Elaine's so excited. It's still like 3 in the fucking morning.
I go to bed, you guys.
She keeps telling us that she has massive pregnancy brain and she's moody as hell. Which is just, I think, sort of, it could be one of 2 things. It could be just flavoring that Robert Jordan thinks is funny, as he always thinks things are funny that happen only to women. Or it is to sort of point us in the direction of why Elaine is making stupid decisions, which isn't perhaps as feminist as Robert Jordan maybe thinks it is.
Yeah.
Like, pregnant women are just as capable of making rational decisions as anyone else.
They do it every day, actually.
Yeah, in fact, they have to do it every day in order to live in the world.
Yeah, survive.
Yeah, if pregnant women lost their minds for the 9 months of their pregnancies, we would just have asylums full of
pregnant women.
Screaming pregnant people.
I'm sure there's some people who would love that to be the case, but
that's not how it happens.
That's not how it
One
happens.
still has to go to their work
Go to their, for in the case of this country, for a very long time.
for the full 9 months.
Basically until the baby is born, and then
Until
right
it
back.
starts crowning. Yeah,
Yeah.
you are stuck in your, planted in your office chair.
You will send an email until you are at 10
And
centimeters.
3 hours later, boom, you're right back there.
Yeah, and they're like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. You had to have a C-section? I don't know what that is.
Oh, but we did give you a broom closet to pump.
Yeah.
Check.
But also,
Feminism.
don't do that at work.
Yeah.
That's gross. It is technically there, but you are discouraged.
But it will be
from
frowned
using it.
upon,
Yeah.
incredibly, yeah.
America is such a fucking nightmare, you guys.
So, Nori comes in with this guy who's like, yeah, I followed him easily, apparently. He makes no
Yeah,
comment on
sounds
it being a big deal. And is like, he goes to this house on Full Moon Street. And I conveniently overheard many of the exact details that you would need to identify the two women here. I also conveniently overheard them saying there's just two of us,
Yeah.
which is so ludicrous as to be, like, Elaine doesn't question that for a second.
Like,
Isn't like, someone's like, maybe he misheard, and she's like, there's no way. She's also not like, I don't know, maybe this man specifically is misleading us for some reason.
yeah, also,
Maybe he was caught and paid off to mislead us.
do you know what it sounds like to me when you overhear a villain saying, there's just two of
It
us?
sounds like a trap.
It sounds like they're saying, there's just two of
Yeah,
us.
loudly. Oh, if only we had reinforcements.
Like, it sounds so much like a trap.
Yeah, they also, like...
This is why Elaine and Rand are perfect for
I
each
know,
other.
they're so stupid. Just walk right into traps. It also could just be like, there's only two of us here tonight. There's only two of us for dinner.
Yeah.
There's only two of us for, tomorrow's appointment.
Yeah, there's only two of us to watch Jeopardy.
There's does not indicate at all.
How many people are in that house at any given moment?
Generally, yeah. Given Robert Jordan has made an effort to obscure to us personally how many Black Aja are in the city, I think that we have only seen these two in the couple of times that we've gone through, what's his Bucket's Hatchet Face's
Hatchet
point of
Face.
view to this house. But I also seem to recall there being, like, hints throughout that there are more than these two in the city. So
Sure.
that's just my little beef with it. So Elaine decides that the best course of action is to immediately go confront these, supposedly these two Black Aja. She is so excited. I have a hard time with her excitement, not because I think she should not be excited, but because it feels a little too much like Robert Jordan is trying to get us to be excited about it too. When A, we're clearly savvy enough to know that this is a trap and something bad is going to happen. And B, this achievement, if you can call it an achievement, has not been made through Elaine, unless you count Elaine threatening some guy into compliance, which I don't. Like, there's been no effort personally on Elaine's or any other of our main characters' behalfs to get this done. So it doesn't feel like an accomplishment so much as it feels like an external gift that is just being handed to us, which really diminishes any satisfaction you might feel about it.
Yeah, I think satisfaction is the perfect word. This does not feel like a satisfying wrap up to who murdered Adelius, especially because everyone is just making these, like, incredible logical leaps about who is Black Aja and what happened and all this stuff. Like, and it just doesn't feel like a satisfying wrap up to, like, the Hatchet Face plot or anything, because, yeah, Elaine hasn't been doing anything. And also this plot has been just kind of, like, force-fed to us at various points of Elaine's narrative, and I, like, don't actually really care that much about it.
Yeah, it would be different if we were, like, in Van Dien's point of view, actually making, like, steps in this detective work. But it's also frustrating because, like, Van Dien herself doesn't get to make this discovery. Van Dien's only discoveries have been, like, yeah, also kinswomen have been being murdered, and we also have not been able to prevent that. So, like, my 1 ounce of satisfaction that I take from these 2 chapters is Vandine getting to murder Carrie Ann for murdering her sister.
Yeah, it's a really sick moment.
Like, that's, like, fucking sweet. I wish Vandine didn't die immediately
I
after.
know, it's Vandine and Adelius were, like, my favorite Aes Sedai characters.
There's these
and
2
just, like,
old biddies.
R.I.P. Yeah.
So, Elaine's like, not only do we have to go confront them immediately while we're sleep deprived at 3 a.m, we do not need to, like, sit around and make any sort of concerted plan, do any sort of reconnaissance or surveillance on this place.
No, baby.
Where all 4 of us, all the 4 of the Aes Sedai are going to go, despite the fact that they know for a fact that one of the other women, Saritha or Carrie Ann, is Black Aja, and there is the possibility that both of them are. So, already, you know, there's, like, innumerable branches where we could be like, here's a better decision. Here's a better decision. Personally, I would wait. Personally, I would be like, if I'm gonna have to go now, I would just take Vandine.
Yeah.
Elaine is powerful enough on her own, and they have all these sick weaves, like inverted weaves. They have warders. They have the entire force of the Andoran army. You could easily go there, capture these people rather than killing them, and, I don't know, arrange some way to find out which is the Black Aja, Saritha, or Carrie Ann. You don't have to go through these, like, random hoops of being like, we are going to take the bad guy into
This trap.
with us and hope that someone says something that will.
And then once we are, again, in a trap, actively, somehow we will figure out how to deal with this situation.
So
I mean,
ridiculous.
Vandine does. Vandine is the only one making any
She just
decisions.
brings a fucking knife and is like, oh, you're gonna shield me?
I brought my knife to this
Yeah.
Aes Sedai fight.
They also completely dismiss the advice of their warders, despite the fact that every woman here has at least one warder, and Carrie Ann, I think, is the one who has 3.
Yeah.
So theoretically, that gives you, not theoretically, in practice, that gives you 6 people who are extremely well-equipped, better equipped, I would estimate, than the Black Aja people who don't have their warders with them.
And yeah, and like, all of these people, you know, warders are trained with a lot of tactical skill. All 6 of them are like, not a great idea.
Yeah, this is terrible.
And Elaine is like, I don't make bad decisions.
Yeah, I'm the queen.
I'm the queen of Andor.
This also falls back on something that Robert Jordan has been telling us throughout this series without showing us. The idea that Aes Sedai are so powerful and so, like, that through their magic they have such incredible lethal force that no one can stand up to it. That the only, like, reasonable people to fight channelers is other channelers. Which patently has not been true. It is certainly a big bad thing when, like, Daman or Ashaman are used in battle situations. They're basically the equivalent of cannons, if not worse. But, like, in close quarters, we've seen Lan, Matt, Rand, everyone just hold their own against channelers because they have tools, like, they have equipment to help them.
Yeah.
I don't know, you guys.
Yeah, well, the idea that only channelers can do anything is just, like, a huge part of the next chapter as well.
Yes.
And you're right, it just, like, hasn't been proven, so I don't know if, like, another function of this is to try and remind us of the lethal force that Aes Sedai, and, like, in particular, have as we head into the last 3 books. I don't know.
I just also, like, it's different for every person, you know? Some people are probably going to be pretty good at, like, close combat magic. Other people are going to, like, be like, what?
Close-up magic.
Close-up, yeah.
Vandine's like, is this your card?
Is this your fucking card? Gambit style.
Yeah, and
Kill
then someone with it. Oh, Gambit's such a cool X-Men.
Gambit's a really...
X-Man? X-Man is singular?
I guess.
X-person?
X-entity?
X-entity?
I don't know.
X.
So, despite everyone's advice, they go to this house and basically just waltz in. They just waltz right up to this room that has, Cheyenne, I think, is the not Black Aja, she's just the Dark Friend hostess who's here. Elaine sends a bunch of, her bodyguards to go arrest Hatchet Face. No word yet on how that's gone. Well, I assume all of the bodyguards are like, fuck yeah, can't wait to throw this guy in the dungeons.
Yeah.
And I say good for them.
Yeah.
But Elaine and the three other Aes Sedai walk up. There's Cheyenne and these two Black Aja, because they are able to disguise invert their weaves, it's called. Elaine and the others manage to creep up directly on them and shield them, and it's like, wow, everything is coming up Elaine for all of 10 seconds before 4 more Black Aja just sort of walk up behind them and tase them. Mm-hmm. At least I think it's a taser.
They basically have like a terangrial taser,
Yeah.
basically. And are just like, and of course once you get tased, I guess, you
can't
can no
do
longer
anything.
use magic.
Yeah.
That's science.
Yeah.
And so
then they're like, oh, well, this is fun. Let's kidnap Elaine and just dispatch the other ones. And someone's like, oh, well, don't dispatch Carrie Ann. She's one of ours. And Van Dien's like, stabs Carrie Ann. And then Van Dien and Saritha are immediately just killed by the power, which just feels like, it feels a little bit like a ROM. It's like, why have we spent so much of the last few books with these characters who, like, given I couldn't give you 3 characteristics of Saritha's off the top of my head. She is as bland comes.
yeah.
But, like, if we're just going to kill them off because of the main character's incredibly poor decisions and not have to have the main character reckon with that in any way, then it's just very obviously, like, picking off red shirts, you know?
Yeah, that's the perfect way to put it. It's like we have to thin the cast, I guess.
Yeah, somehow.
And then add more characters, I guess.
Yeah.
Is what it seems like.
Like, it is absolutely fine to kill off characters. At this point in the series, I would encourage it. But if they're characters who have been at all close to characters who are going to have more longevity, then there has to be some sort of reaction to that.
Yeah, I at least haven't read the next couple books, but, like, in the moment, it doesn't seem like Elaine gives a shit. Like, they recover spoiler, Elaine, gets kidnapped and thrown naked in the back of a wagon or whatever. I can't remember if she's naked, but it feels like she probably is. And she was just like, whatever.
Yeah, Brigitte keeps being like, well, her bond feels really sad. And I'm like, I would feel pretty sad if I was being kidnapped, too, to be honest. There's no, like, is she sad because of the kidnapping? Is she sad because of the murders that happened in front of her? Is she sad because she fucked up big time?
Yeah.
Who knows? So, we then switch over to Brigitte's point of view as they're outside this house and as all of the warders feel their Aes Sedai die and charge. Again, here's a mass loss of life because presumably all these warders are just killed immediately.
Yeah.
Brigitte, meanwhile, just turns around, heads right back to the palace, knows that even with her, she wisely is like, I have no idea how many Black Aja there are in there. Presumably, if Elaine was surprised, then more than she expected. So I can't safely take them on here, so I'm going to run back to the palace, get reinforcements, and then head them off as they are leaving the city, which I can do because I can pinpoint where Elaine is. So she goes back and starts to do that. She is, of course, the only, like, hitches in this plan are that, like, every possible bad thing that could happen in the siege is also happening right now. Like, there's some sort of mercenary mutiny happening elsewhere. The seemingly neutral force is now in motion, and everyone's like, what are they gonna do about that? Great. So, Brigitte basically is like, Diellen, you take care of that shit. I'm going to go to where Elaine is.
And also take most of our soldiers. So, like, good luck, Diellen. There's, like, one of the gates is under siege, the mercenaries, like you said, all this stuff. And they're, like, basically like, Diellen, you have, like, 100 dudes. Good luck.
We have to rescue someone who at this point isn't even really worth rescuing.
Yeah, like...
Like, I know for Brigitte, personally, you want to get Elaine. But if I were Diellen at this point, I'd be like, she did what? Okay, maybe I should actually be the queen.
Yeah, like, if we're like, yes, of course, human life, Elaine is Brigitte's friend.
For reasons unknown.
Yeah, of course Brigitte wants to rescue her, but from the, like, socio-political viewpoint of literally anybody else in the room, they're like, I'd be like, no, cutting our losses.
Yeah, they can have her. Like,
yeah.
We're not going to
Brigitte,
ransom
you're
her.
welcome to go after her, but you cannot take the
Go
soldiers
on a
with you.
Liam Neeson Taken-style rescue mission all you want, but, like...
You can't have the whole army.
Yeah,
This is
fuck
absurd.
off.
Also, do you need the whole army?
No, because Brigitte's whole plan is she's going to get the sea folk there and be like, well, unless you rescue Elaine, there's no way you can keep your bargain, and then your bosses will be mad at you.
Mm-hmm. So the sea folk have to use their channeling as a weapon.
Yeah, which we've never given any indication that the sea folk care about the ethics of using their magic as a weapon. This is more adding fuel to the fire of, like, the sea folk are so intractable and so impossible to deal with that they have to be basically blackmailed into doing anything particularly helpful. Mm-hmm. Which is just, like, slander against an entire nation of fantasy people, and it's pretty obvious why this particular nation of fantasy people is getting that treatment.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, I mean, it's just, like, very blatant racism that Robert Jordan has constructed an entire race of people in an entire world and has still added anti-Black sentiment into it at, like, astounding levels.
I know, he managed to do something that I think was so interesting in sort of removing the usual context of Blackness from this race of fantasy people. You know, instead of being like, they are tribal desert folk, which is usually what we get when Africans or African people are represented in fantasy. He's like, they're, like, tied to the sea.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really interesting. You would think that that would leave you with a lot of room to maneuver without, like, falling into any of the pitfalls of stereotypes, things like that. But Robert Jordan is like, I'm gonna make them so hateable that for entirely separate bad reasons, all the white people in this fantasy world will still hate all the Black people in this fantasy world.
Yeah, entirely, like, separate reasons, and yet somehow still, like, they're entirely separate reasons, but, like, they're still upholding the same racist narratives that people have been throwing against Black communities across the globe for centuries. So it's like, you constructed this entire culture of people, did that really interesting thing of removing them from their usual setting, and we're just like, I'm still gonna dump all this racist bullshit in here anyway, and all of my white characters are going to hate them, but, like, don't worry, they are actually everything bad that I'm saying about Black people. Mm-hmm. They are actually that, and I'm going to prove that to you in every scene with them.
Which indicates what about racist sentiments in the real world?
Yeah.
Maybe you're right.
Yeah.
Because if they're right in this fantasy setting, you could be right in the real world.
You could be right in the real world. Like, so yeah, it's some real interesting sort of world-building gymnastics going on here. So, yeah, I mean, the racism is really off the charts in this one. And I agree that it's never really been... Ed is just sneezing up a storm. You guys, our cats are going to drive me to insanity. I think we've talked about the storm sillies on this podcast before, but
it's quite bad.
We've got a big storm, so the cats have some big sillies. Yeah, I agree with the sentiment that it doesn't seem like the sea folk are necessarily opposed to using the power as a weapon. It's also never really been indicated to us that they do that. You know, it seems like typically people who can channel they call them wind finders. You know, like their role seems to be primarily a sort of logistical one, which I think is really cool. Like a way to make magic just kind of a part of the mechanics of your life is really interesting. It's not like Brigitte is necessarily like manipulating a pacifist community. It's not like she's got, you know, the Tuatha on, you know,
in a chokehold.
Like, here's a sword.
We've already done that.
And it went
super
so
great.
well.
Super great.
It was amazing how well it went. It was just like a case study in how to
cure all mental illness.
Yeah. There's no mental illness that can't be cured
therapy.
with a sword.
Have a sword. I mean, that's almost literally what Sigmund Freud said. If you accept the sword as a euphemism.
If you just had a dick,
you'd be fine.
You'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
So Brigitte really isn't asking them to do anything that's necessarily against their ethics, I think. But it does, like, sit really strangely with me in terms of ethics that Brigitte has these people who's, like, it might not necessarily be part of our, like, cultural code of conduct, but it was very explicitly a part of my, like, deal with you, a part of this, like, contract, this treaty that we have signed, that I will not be used as a weapon in your wars. I don't want any part of your wars.
Yeah, for very obvious reasons.
Yeah.
If Lane loses, which is still very possible, then the Sea Folk are screwed in terms of, like, the next ruler. And Brigitte is basically just being like, well, they wouldn't treat you well anyway. And it's like, well, they definitely won't now.
Yeah, and it's not like Elaine is treating them great anyway.
Yeah.
Elaine gave them 1 square mile to have a port. Do you know how little 1 square mile is? Whatever. So it's just, like, I don't know. It's just, like, more of this racism of, I don't know, you have to be useful to the plot somehow, and the Sea Folk apparently, as of yet, have not been useful. So Brigitte's just gonna sit there and bully them. I don't know. The whole thing just sits really gross with me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily being very clear, but the whole scene just sits badly. But it's successful.
It's successful because, you know, all the Sea Folk are linked. So that sort of trumps the individual Black Aja. So in the next chapter, they will be able to rescue Elaine, but we just end with Brigitte being like, oh my god, Elaine has not felt any fear this entire time she was being kidnapped. Which is clearly meant to indicate to us, like, Elaine is A, brave, B, Elaine has great trust in Brigitte, and in Brigitte's capacity to rescue her from this situation. But to me, it indicates Elaine's stupid.
Yeah, like, I can no longer deal. I feel like we've been dealing with this, particularly with, like, Elaine and Nynaeve for, like, books. This idea that, like, bravery is only real if you are never afraid. Mm-hmm. And, like, this is, like, a baseline thing that we teach children. You know, like, you do not have to be fearless all the time in order to do hard things.
In fact, being fearless, as Elaine proves quite obviously, is almost certainly is a great way to get yourself into terrible situations.
Yeah, like,
a healthy dose of fear is just that, healthy.
Yeah, like, fear is literally a survival instinct that we have developed in order to keep ourselves and our communities safe and alive.
Yeah.
So I just, like, don't know. It feels to me like more of this really totally rad girl boss feminism of, like, our ladies are so brave. Aren't they so cool? Mm-hmm. It's like, no. You just got kidnapped. You were probably hogtied naked in the back of that cart.
Knowing Robert Jordan.
This is Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. And who knows where they were taking you. Like, I think it'd be reasonable to assume, and honestly, like, if Elaine actually cared about Andor, she might want them to be like, we're going to prioritize keeping the city safe over, like, my individual person. And, like, of course that would make you feel afraid. Like, maybe people aren't coming after you. Or maybe it's just Brigitte, you know, you have no way of knowing. Yeah. Except through the bond who's coming after you. So, like, it's fine to be afraid. I also think it's just more of this, like, absurd, unbelievably frustrating pregnancy invincibility that Elaine is putting so much stock in. And as we've said multiple times, like, Elaine being like, nothing bad can happen to me, does not extend to the people around her. And this is, like, a perfect example of that, of her just, like, plowing through bad situations, convinced that she will live at least until her children are born. And now her body count is just, like, through the roof from the last, like, 4.5 hours alone.
Yeah.
Like, the Sea Folk are not hesitant in their weapons that they throw at these ladies.
Yeah.
They're just blowing people up quite gruesomely. At least that's what it feels like. I don't actually
Brigitte
know.
is like, take some of them alive, which is also a bad decision. You should just kill them.
Yeah.
Best Black Aja is a dead Black Aja, to be honest. Yeah, that's where we'll leave it. I guess my last parting shot is that it wouldn't be a problem that Elaine makes bad decisions, except that the narrative never gives her or anyone, really, consequences for their bad decisions. This is the perennial problem in the Wheel of Time, specifically. Characters do silly things, and the narrative, instead of being like, this was a silly thing, and now the character has to deal with the fact that it was a silly thing. The narrative is like, it worked out great, so keep moving on.
Keep on keeping on. Yeah, she, Elaine has sort of the Carrie Bradshaw-esque armor where she can make literally the worst decisions. She can make the worst decisions you've ever seen a character make, and, like, the worst that ever happens is that she gets a little sad.
Yeah, as we've said, Robert Jordan really did learn everything he knows about women from Sex and the City. And it is ever more obvious as the series goes on. Okay, our cats are having a meltdown, so thanks for listening. Thanks to Glenna McKenzie for our theme song. Thanks to our patrons on Patreon and our followers on social media. We'll be back next week with the roundup of Elaine's sort of plot here in Camelin and the siege on Camelin. We'll also get a little random chapter from Furik Kareed, who's one of the Shanshin, who's hunting down Tuon in a good way, not a bad way.
In the wrong way. If he was hunting down Tuon to kill her,
yeah, that would make him a sympathetic character.
Maybe I'd be on his side.
But alas,
he is a loyalist piece of shit.
Anything to add?
No.
You have a sign off?
Yeah, on last Friday, one of my grants is being audited. Being monitored is what it's called. And I was, like, emailing with the auditor, and one of the people on the email chain replied to me but didn't take the auditor off, and I didn't notice. So then I replied all at the auditor, and, like, wasn't anything bad. It was just basically me being like, I don't know what I'm doing. The auditor saw that, so I want to die.
Oh, guys.
Just
email
is really hard. I get too many emails is the problem.
Yeah, that's true. I always look at your inbox and it's like, ew.
It's always, and I can never get it below 20 unread, no matter what I do.
Jeez.
It's my Sisyphean rock.
It would drive me nuts. Okay, everyone. Have an okay week, I guess.
Goodbye. I hope wherever you are, it's not snowing.
Oh, Christ. Goodbye.
Bye.